Orks got nerfed. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. As always, my name is Jay, and in this video I want to talk about Orks post-balanced data slate, because Orks were one of the armies. There were several armies that got negatively affected, there were several armies that got positively affected, there were several armies that were neutrally affected. And while AdMech players are rejoicing, Ork players not so much. Tyranid players rejoicing, as Chaos players not so much. That's okay. So, before we begin, I want to thank this week's sponsor, Into the AM. Don't let your wardrobes get nerfed like the Orks did. Check out Into the AM. As you can see right now, I'm wearing this amazing shirt, this amazing t-shirt from Into the AM. I love the feel, the look, just the awesome appearance of the shirt. It has a great print. It feels amazing. I love the fit. Check out Into the AM and use the coupon code JKNIGHT to get 10% off your order, so everyone wins. Huge thank you to Into the AM for sponsoring this week's video. So, let's talk about it today, of course. And I'm actually going to remain quasi-optimistic. You're going to call me on this, but I'm still optimistic about this. I love this army. Orks are still my favorite army. This is still a great codex. But let's go a little bit back. Orks just came out, new codex, right? And they were strong. Very, very strong. I played 5 games with Orks and I still haven't lost. Which isn't a lot of games, I know, but the games weren't close in a couple of scenarios. And I played some different detachments and had some fun. And so early thoughts, of course, were there was definitely one unit in particular that was much stronger than the other units, and there were a couple detachments significantly stronger than the other detachments. Number one, Meganobs. Right? Meganobs were by far the standout unit of this codex, and how can you tell? Obviously, from day one, what you were finding was people were running max squads of Meganobs, like 3 of them, in every detachment. It wasn't just Bully Boys. Now, Bully Boys obviously is the Knobs and War Boss detachment for the Orks, so it makes sense to have squads of Meganobs. They're Knobs. They're really awesome, but you were finding full squads of three full squads of Meganobs, or squads of 5 frequently in a truck, in Green Tide, and in the Dread Mob, and the Big Hunt, and Speed Freaks. And so every competitive list in every detachment for the Orks had huge squads of Meganobs. Which is a sign, because obviously every detachment is designed to favor a group of units. Regardless of the detachment, Meganobs were still an auto-include. And so from day one with this codex, I've been very steadfast in, if you're playing Meganobs, enjoy the time right now because they're going to get nerfed. GW has been actively balancing armies, and we all know from a mile away that Meganobs stuck out like a sore thumb. They were way too powerful. And so, yeah, they got nerfed. Right, makes sense. The one thing that made them so survivable is, of course, they have good toughness, toughness 5, several wounds, several wounds. They have a 2-up armor, but it's the feel no pain. And so on the turn that you called a Wa, they had a 4-up feel no pain. Until recently. And the crazy thing about Bully Boys was you can call 2 Was. So essentially what you were doing was, if you're an Ork player, was turn 1, you'd shoot them across the board in a truck. Turn 2 called the Wa, and turn 3 called the Wa. And so if your opponent knew what they were doing, it's best to just ignore them. And they would just destroy a bunch of things in your opponent's army, because if your opponent didn't have a way of dealing with them easily, the best idea is just to ignore them and focus on what you can kill. Because the amount of firepower it would take to take out a squad of 5 Meganobs with a 4-up feel no pain and 2-up armor is substantial, right? Toughness 5. So you'd have to dedicate a lot of firepower to kill a Meganob. And it was just ridiculous how much firepower you actually had to dedicate, so they were insane. And that's what I'm saying. So all the lists had 3 squads of 5 Meganobs. Now the one thing is, of course, and I hope people weren't falling for this, is the fact that GW's, like, if GW kept Meganobs incredibly strong, they would sell giant amounts of $85 Canadian boxes of 3 models, right? Like, you think about how much it would cost. I've done this analysis in previous videos for Orks, how much it would cost to be an Ork player and play full squads of Mega Knobs. You have to buy 5 boxes to run 3 squads of, or 5 squad, to run 3 squads of 5. You'd have to buy 5 boxes. So you'd spend about $500 Canadian, almost. And if you wanted to run Big Mechs with them, right, for the Dread Mob detachment, you have to buy an additional box. So 6 boxes, you're spending, about $550, including taxes, in Canada. So what GW does is, of course, make an army really good, hoping you buy a bunch of them, and then they nerf them now into the ground very quickly. So going forward, very few people are going to be buying giant amounts of Mega Knobs, but if you were one of the people that wanted to went out and bought them, that's unfortunate, right? So, of course, I knew the writing was on the wall. Mega Knobs were going to get nerfed. And how did they get nerfed, right? They went from 30 points to 40 points, so they increased the points by 10 points per model. So 33% increase is huge, relatively, right? 10 points per model doesn't sound big, but you can think of relatively 30 to 40 points. The main thing is the nerf to the Feel No Pain. So instead of now a 4-up Feel No Pain when they call the WA, it's a 5-up Feel No Pain when they call the WA, making them significantly less survivable, right? When you think about the points, so if you're running, 15 Mega Knobs, now it runs you an extra 150 points, which does hurt, and then they're just less survivable. 1 in 3 chance of surviving with Feel No Pain versus 50-50. That is significant. So those 2 tweaks have brought the Mega Knobs down a lot, and they've gone from an auto-include to maybe you want to include to have a good time. They're not extremely broken. They're not terrible by any means. It's just now they're much more in line with a lot of other models as far as competitiveness goes in the Codex. And so there's no real reason to go out and buy 5 boxes of them. You could probably get away with what you have for your army. So that's cool. The other nerf that happened with his army was regarding Green Tide. Now, once again, Bully Boys was actually the most preferred detachment for the competitive scene, but of course the linchpin of Bully Boys was the Mega Knobs. You took care of the Mega Knobs, you instantly killed Bully Boys as a detachment, because Knobs are just not as good. Knobs are nowhere as good. Mega Knobs were insane. Now they're good. They're mid. They're pretty good. They're still good, right? And a lot of the war bosses are still pretty strong, and they didn't get really touched in this Codex update. But Bully Boys got brought down a peg simply because the linchpin of the entire detachment was Mega Knobs. And so Mega Knobs are now brought down, bringing Bully Boys down. And then, of course, we have Green Tide. Green Tide was the other one. Green Tide is my favorite detachment. No, sorry, Dread Mob is my favorite detachment. But Green Tide is a fun detachment to bring too. I'm going to make a future video about having to rebase all my entire army. We'll talk about that in a future video. But Green Tide is the other detachment that was really strong. And so the choices are, you go after Ork Boys, or you go after the Green Tide detachment. And the thing is, Green Tide made Ork Boys the next level. Green Ork Boys in the other detachments was nowhere near as strong, so they just went for the detachment, right? Versus Mega Knobs, which are across the board, you can always call the WA, so that one turn they were pretty invincible. It was, Mega Knobs got nerfed, now it's the Green Tide. Most of the nerfs for the army in this update were about Green Tide. There were also points changes across, like Weird Boys and Warpheads that went up in points. Pain Bosses and Pain Boys went up like between 10 and 20 points each. So that'll, minor tweaks. Boss Snickrot went up, I think it was like 15 points. Again, it'll hurt the army as well, but most of the rule updates were involving Green Tide. And so Green Tide, of course, the detachment rule is called Mob Mentality. And so Mob Mentality before was you get a 5-up invulnerable save, and if your squad was 10 or more models, you also got to reroll 1s. That was huge, extremely survivable. I played several games with Green Tide, and it was just ridiculous. The survivability of a squad of Ork Boys, toughness 5, even 1 wound each doesn't matter. Toughness 5 with a 5-up invulnerable save is insane, right? The amount of firepower was nuts. So it got nerfed. So now it used to be, once again, 5s, reroll 1s if the squad is 10 or more than 10. Now it's 6s, 5s, 5 open vulnerable save if they're greater than 10. So if it's greater than 10, it reduces their chances of surviving from 7 in 18 to 6 in 18. Not terrible. Decreases their chance of survivability by about 5%. Not the most extreme nerf. The crazier nerf is when you go from a squad of 10, less than 10. 10 less, right? Because then it goes from a 5 up invulnerable save in the previous iteration to a 6 up invulnerable save in this iteration. You're decreasing the survivability by half. 1 in 3 to 1 in 6. So that's a huge change. When the squads are smaller than 10 boys, they're basically the old Death Skulls with a 6 up invulnerable save running around the field. Again, they're going to be survivable, but the key for the Green Tide is to run large squads of boys. This will come into play, and of course, then there's debate of what do you want to run full squads of 20 with the new secondary objectives that really favor squads of 20. But whatever, we'll talk about that in a future video. Maybe squads of 19. But that's cool. So as I said, it's a minor nerf for squads above 10. For below 10, it's actually significant. It reduces their survivability by half. As well, 2 of their really strong stratagems also got really nerfed. And so there's Tide of Muscle, which Tide of Muscle used to be, this was actually one of my favorite stratagems. It was so random. Basically, you could play the stratagem and you could add the game turn to your distance. Now it is just simply if the squad is 10 or more models, you can reroll the charge roll, which isn't bad. You know, it changes your average roll from 3.5 to like 4.8 or something like that, so it's still almost 5 inches per turn, which is great earlier in the game. Once again, you play it earlier in the game instead of adding a 1, the odds are you're getting about a 5. In the middle of the game, it's about neutral, and later in the game, it's a little slightly weaker. So overall, I'm okay with that change. Overall, I think that's good. It's less predictable, that you knew exactly what you're adding before, and now it's random, but you can reroll if you're having squads greater than 10. Once again, I feel the theme with Green Tide is to take more than squads of 10 anyway. Run a giant blob of 20 boys, 6 of them. You want to flood the field with 120 boys. That's really the feel of Green Tide, and I think this still works really well with that theme. And then, of course, Go Get 'em. The stratagem as well also got changed for the weaker. Beforehand, if the squad had 10 or more models, you got automatically a 6. You can just move them up to 6 inches. And now it is you can roll a d6 to determine how far the squad can go, right? So it's went from 6 inches guaranteed up to 6 inches to d6. Which again drops them from 6 to 3.5. 3.5 is on average, so that's a bit of a change. But those are the 2 major changes. Again, Pain Boys, Pain Bosses went up slightly, Snickerot went up slightly. The main changes to the Codex were Mega Knobs, which we all saw coming. They were stupidly strong, and Green Tide. They're not as survivable, especially if they're running squads less than 10. So you want to run more than 10. More than 10, slight change. Less than 10, big change. And the stratagems got changed accordingly as well. But what do I think about the Orks Codex after these changes? Are they playable? Yes. I still think this is a great codex. I still think this is one of the best codices that they've released so far in this edition. It has, when they brought in these changes, it now has much better internal balance, I find. And there's tons of lists I want to try out because now they're all competing. They could all be relatively competitive with each other, and I still think it's going to be competitive in the meta. There's still tons of fun lists. It's fun to play. It's quasi-competitive still. I still think that the army could win tournaments and have a great time doing it. Orks are always the most fun army in my opinion. I can't wait to try out these lists in future games and in tournaments. Despite the nerfs. As I said, I'm still just as excited to be an Ork player today as I was a week ago. Also, to be fair, I love Green Tide. I don't have any Mega Knobs, but I love Green Tide. So, take that as you will. But that's it. I think overall, it was justified. I don't think this is an overcorrection yet. I think that it was quasi-fair. And I think that Orks are still playable, and they're still going to be fun. What do you think? Leave comments in the comment section down below. Let's create a discussion. What do you think about these codex changes? Are they justified? Are you okay with them? What do you think? Leave comments in the comment section down below. As always, thank you, as always, for watching this video. And like this video, comment in the comment section down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Hit that bell so every time I make a new video, you see it coming. And stay tuned for more vids on reviews and painting tutorials and painting videos in general. Until next time, Jay saying happy painting your orcs.